Welcome to College Smart Radio, helping you bring into focus the true cost of college and how to tackle the runaway cost of financing a college education. College Smart Radio is hosted by Beatrice Schultz, a certified financial planner and founder of Westface College Planning. Now, here's your host for College Smart Radio, Beatrice Schultz.
Welcome to College Smart Radio. Do you have a child who's at or considering attending UC Davis? Have you considered the idea of buying a property for your student to live in while at school? It's not uncommon for the parents of college students to consider buying an investment property near their child's university. The thought is that their child can live in the property during college and the parents will make some money from the real estate venture. On today's College Smart Radio program, I have a Davis real estate expert with me in the studio to share with you her experiences with the Davis real estate market for purchasing short-term property while your child is a student at UC Davis. Hi, I'm Beatrice Schultz. Welcome to our weekly show, College Smart Radio, where we help you tackle the runaway costs of a college education. Our show is about bringing up-to-date and practical advice to parents who are dealing with the cost of a college education for their kids. With some Ivy League private schools costing over $60,000 a year, a UC costing $35,000 a year, and a California State University running $25,000 a year, parents need more help than ever. We bring you that help by sharing ways to pay less, tapping into financial aid, and prioritizing your source of funds to make sure you get through the most expensive years of your life. Based on my own education and experience, I share my insights with you week in and week out. I hold a Bachelor of Science degree in Chemical Engineering and a Master's degree in International Business, and I am a certified financial planner. I'm the owner of the San Carlos-based college planning business, Westface College Planning. I host workshops and webinars on college planning and consult with parents on a daily basis. And in addition to my insights, I bring in experts in many areas of the college process to College Smart Radio, from counselors, financial professionals, financial aid officers, student coaches, parents, and even students. You'll learn firsthand the ins and outs of how to pay for college and survive financially. And in addition to our show, you can find lots of powerful information at our website, collegesmartradio.com. We have many articles that I've authored with up-to-date information on navigating the waters of paying for the runaway cost of college. We have a monthly e-newsletter full of content about college planning, and we also have posted a glossary of key terms used in the world of college planning, terms like total cost of attendance, FAFSA, student assets, 529, base year, and so forth. And we have a link to our free community parent workshops and webinars that I host to teach parents how to pay for college and how the financial aid system really works. So let's get into today's show. On today's show, we'll be talking to an expert on Davis real estate, and we'll be discussing the pros and cons of buying property in Davis, California for a student to live in and manage while at college at UC Davis. I received a lot of emails and comments after our January 12th College Smart Radio show. On that show, I had Mark Guthrie on the show, my partner at Westface Financial, and together we were delving into the numbers, looking at the financials of buying a home for your students to live in while in college. And from the feedback that I received from some of the people that are sending in comments, they're like, okay, we like the numbers, but we wouldn't mind having a little more detail specific to the colleges, which is where I thought it might be nice to bring in our expert from Davis. You can find the podcast of the show that we did on January 12th, which will give you a lot of background under the archives of collegesmartradio.com. And click on the January 12th show, which was buying real estate for your child, and you can review it after you take a look at this, after we listen to this show. But before we talk about the UC Davis market specifically, I want to recap some of the numbers that we went through from that show, just so you know what assumptions we were using. What Mark and I came up with is, if you could find a home that cost about $300,000, and we're talking typically a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home or a condo, and we just assume that you sell it for exactly what you bought it for. So appreciation is going to be a benefit, or if the market goes down, it's going to be a loss for you. We assume that you put a 20% down payment down, and therefore you'd want to get a mortgage for $240,000. When we're thinking about this type of investment and you're thinking of holding on to it for maybe 4, 5, 6, 7 years, it's considered a shorter term investment. So we were we would probably likely recommend that you would just get a shorter term, like a 5-year fixed or 7-year fixed interest loan, which is probably available for about 3.5% today. And so when we look at the numbers of what your expenses would be, your mortgage over 4 years would add up to about $33,000. Your property tax at 1% of the value of the home for 4 years would be about $12,000. Home insurance might be about $2,500 over 4 years. If you did choose a condo, you'd have probably about $10,000 in condo fees, or you'd want to have about $10,000 in upkeep type budget on your home. Real estate fees, it's probably going to cost you about 6% of the sales price when you do sell it, about $18,000. So if you add up all those numbers, that's total expenses of about $76,000 over 4 years. In our model, we were thinking that you'd have your student rent out 2 of the rooms to 2 roommates, and on average, for a $300,000 home in the communities we were thinking, you probably would get about $500 per room. So the rental income over 4 years for the 2 extra roommates would be about $50,000. If you subtract the $50,000 from the $76,000 in expenses, you end up with about a $25,000 cost, which is about what it would cost your student to be renting a home from someone else. So that's kind of how we did the math to say, you might come out even with a $300,000 home, 3-bedroom, $500 per room. Now, obviously, this is a simple example, and every family's experience is going to be a little bit different. But on that show, we also talked about the fact that there's some emotional or non-financial aspects to considering buying a home for your child to live in and manage. For some students, this could be a great experience and a great growth opportunity and a great way for parents and students to work together on a project. But for some who aren't interested or who really aren't the type who would want to manage a real estate or manage their roommates, it could end up being a disaster. So obviously there's going to be some good and some bad. So to help me today talk about some examples of a town where you might be able to find this model work, I invited a good friend of mine, Karen Waggoner, who's an expert in real estate in Davis, California. She lives in Davis with her husband and 2 high school-age daughters, and she works with Coldwell Banker as a real estate professional. And you can find out more about Karen and real estate in Davis on her website, homesforsaleindavis.com, which you'll find the link on my website. Hey, Karen, welcome to College Smart Radio.
Hi, Trixie. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for joining us. So, Karen, I know that you live in Davis, love Davis. So before we go into delve into the details of what properties might be available, why don't you tell us a little bit about Davis?
All right. Well, there's lots to know about Davis, but I'll just give you a few quick facts that are kind of interesting. The population of Davis is 66,000. The city's quite small. It only has a land area of 10 square miles. And another interesting thing is that Davis residents boast the state's highest level of education, with over 67% of the population 25 years or older having attained a 4-year degree. The average income in Davis is $114,000, and Davis is a great place to live for all types of people. In addition to working with clients who decide to purchase a home for their student, I also do quite a bit of work with young families who are attracted to Davis because of the excellent K-12 school system. In fact, it's kind of interesting that a fair number of UC Davis graduates do end up coming back to Davis to live and work and raise their families. And in addition to the school system, everybody in Davis really loves the small town atmosphere. I also work with quite a few Bay Area retirees or folks who are soon going to be retiring who have chosen to move to Davis for their retirement years. They like the idea that Davis is close to the Bay Area and easy to get to and offers a lot of the things that the Bay Area does, but we have a little bit slower pace of life in Davis, which they like.
Well, part of the reason why I thought Davis was a great example when I was talking about this with Karen is that it really is close enough to the Bay Area that if you had a student that's going to UC Davis, they're not going to live at home and commute. There's no way. But for a family, it's manageable to think about having a rental property in a drivable distance that they could go check in on the property. It's not so far away for the student to be, and it's also a place that people like to live in, because when we were doing our research, there were a lot of small towns that had colleges that were great college towns, but weren't necessarily a huge pull for anything once you're out of college. They're all about college students. So Karen, what do you, so when you're thinking about, so we're thinking about Davis now, you live there. Why, any other tips that you'd give to people to say, hey, this is a good place to buy?
Well, a lot of people know Davis by the In-N-Out Burger stop on the way to Tahoe because it's just off the freeway, and it's once you've gotten through the Bay Area traffic, it tends to be a good stopping point for people. But if you go just a bit further, literally a block further, you head into a lovely, vibrant downtown Davis that has shops, cafes, restaurants. We even have a new wine bar and 2 specialty beer establishments. We have 3 movie theaters. We have lots of miles of greenbelt trails that meander through the parks and the wildlife areas. And we also have a world-famous farmers market that takes place every weekend. In addition to that, there are many cultural events presented by a range of community organizations, as well as the well-known Mondavi Center for the Arts, which attracts nationally recognized performers.
And that Mondavi Center is what you see off of 80 if you don't know Davis very well. Well, Karen's a really good friend of mine, so every time that I'm in Davis, I get to her house, she gives me a bike and a helmet, and we bike to wherever we're going to go, including a bar at the end of the night, and we're driving home in the dark. And I love the town of Davis. And I have a lot of students who have chosen to go to UC Davis because it's not that easy to get into, but it's got a great reputation, and it is not too far away from home, but far enough away that they can go to college, but know that they can drive home on the weekends if they want to. So should we talk a little bit about real estate in Davis?
Sure. That sounds good. Also, I have a couple of little fun facts about UC Davis.
Okay,
would you like to hear a couple of those?
Absolutely.
All right. Couple little basics first. 32,000 students, 5,300 acres, so that makes it the largest UC campus.
But I didn't know that.
Yeah, but here are some fun facts. It was ranked the 10th happiest U.S. college campus by Newsweek in 2011. 70% of students either ride their bike, walk, or bus to school, which is a nice thought for a parent as well, because you may be able to subtract out a car insurance, gas, and so forth for your student. So Sierra Magazine ranked it the number one cool school. U.S. News and World Report, their 2013 report ranked UC Davis 8th amongst public research universities. And finally, Kiplinger's Personal Finance ranked UC Davis as 20th out of the 100 best values in public colleges for 2012.
Well, Karen, thank you very much. And actually, UC Davis is an awesome school, so I'm excited to hear more about the UC Davis campus. But right now, we're going to take a quick break. You're with us with College Smart Radio on 1220 KDOW, where my guest today is Karen Waggoner, a real estate professional from Davis, California. We're discussing buying real estate in Davis for your UC Davis student. We'll be right back with Karen Waggoner on College Smart Radio.
For more information on today's topic, visit collegesmartradio.com or call area code 650-587-1559. College Smart Radio continues in moments on AM 1220 KDOW. Contact Beatrice Schultz at collegesmartradio.com or call area code 650-587-1559. Now, back to College Smart Radio with your host Beatrice Schultz on AM 1220 KDOW.
Welcome back to College Smart Radio, where we help you tackle the runaway costs of college. You're with us with AM 1220 KDOW. I'm Beatrice Schultz. I'm talking with my guest Karen Waggoner about real estate in Davis. Hey Karen, we've been talking a little bit about Davis, and I talked about some samples of of the costs or the financial numbers of buying a piece of real estate that might be worth about $300,000. Can you buy a house like that in Davis? Because it sounds like a pretty nice place to live. I'm wondering what is available. Is there homes available that might be in that range?
There are definitely homes that are available in that price range. It's interesting. We're going through a high demand, low inventory period right now, but even with only about 50 homes on the market in Davis right now, there are about a half dozen homes that are priced between $275,000 and $325,000 that are 3-bedroom, 2 baths.
And are those homes in areas that would be reasonable for a Davis student to live in and be able to either take the bus or walk to school?
Absolutely. Most of the homes right now that just are popping up on the MLS in that price range are in East Davis. That is a little bit of an older established neighborhood. The homes were built generally in the 70s. A 3-bedroom, 2 bath, the square footage is generally about 1,200 square feet. And East Davis is an easy bike ride or bus ride to downtown or to UC Davis.
So when you talk about these neighborhoods, is it likely that there is a real mix of neighborhoods? Are there any kind of, I don't want to call them student ghettos, but are there areas where most of these students live, or does it tend to be a real mix with retirees, professors, students, families living together?
Yeah, it really tends to be a mix. Davis has done a very good job of planning in that they build affordable homes or homes geared to perhaps more of a middle-income family within the neighborhoods all over Davis. So it's very diverse, and there really isn't a bad neighborhood in Davis.
That's nice to hear, because often you hear about people living in kind of ghettos of different communities. It doesn't sound like that's the case really in Davis.
Mm-hmm.
So you're talking to families all the time, and some of them come in your door and they're looking for this type of investment. If one of our listeners is thinking, hey, this could be interesting, should they expect to be thinking about the process, or can you give us a little bit of feel for maybe some families that you've worked with or buyers that you've worked with that have gone through this process?
Yeah, well, definitely whenever I meet with a client, we talk about their pricing, their expectations, their time frame. And usually the best way to get started is to take a tour of Davis and look around at the different neighborhoods. I can give people a very good idea with maybe, a short driving tour, what the different neighborhoods are like, what the price ranges are, and what the look and feel of each of those neighborhoods is.
So today, if you had someone who was interested in coming in your doorstep, you might have 6 different homes that are kind of, when I said around 300,000, what kind of range would there be in the houses you were talking about? Was that kind of a little bit below and a little bit above 300,000 that you were thinking?
Yeah, I mean, the average price of a home in Davis in 2012 was $462,000, and the median price was $435,000. So there are anything from condos and what we call half plexes, which is basically the same as a duplex, from the 2s all the way up to very beautiful high square footage homes up into the low 1 millions.
Well, I talked a little bit about on our show when Mark was on the show with me, we talked about the kind of emotional side of thinking about your child purchasing a home, and some of the things we talked about was, is your child the type of student who would even want to manage, would want to find tenants, would want to be paying the bills? Do you find that the families that you work with, that the parents are running all these things, or does it tend to be the students that are kind of collecting the rents and taking care of the homes? What tends to be the model, or do you have a feeling?
Yeah, well, I think that is a really important consideration. There are a number of very good property management companies in Davis, so that if the parents didn't feel that the students were responsible to handle those types of things, I would definitely recommend a property management company. But I've worked with a couple of clients in the last year who their students were perfectly suited to manage the properties and be responsible, and they ended up having a great situation.
So can you talk to us a little bit, maybe give us an example of one of these families?
Sure. One of my families, they purchased a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home in 2008. They paid $329,000. That was still when the market was quite high. They did sell it last year for $277,000, which is about a $50,000 loss. The daughter was studying for an advanced degree at the UC Davis vet school, and she had done the dorm life, done the student life. She was really going to be focusing on her studies these next 4 years at the vet school, and so she really wanted to live in an atmosphere that she could control. She also didn't want the added stress of having to look for a new place and new roommates each year, and I talked to her mom the other day, and her mom said when she was 10 years old, we knew that she could manage a property. So she really enjoyed choosing the roommates, keeping up the property. Her mom said that her study breaks were mowing the lawn and clearing out the gutters, and she said those were great stress releases from school. And she rented the other 2 rooms. Each of the rooms rented for about $700 a month. So the cost did cover the mortgage payment. And the other thing, too, being a vet student, she had several dogs, so she was able to have her living situation with pets just the way that she wanted. And in the end, they did, even though they lost money, I thought it was really interesting when I talked to the mom that she said, if we thought the market was going to be looking up again, we would do it again in a heartbeat.
Well, I think that's a really good point, and I really like that you brought an example where, realistically, today, if you had bought a home in 2007, 2008, the markets were at their peak, and even though, and I know we've talked about the fact that Davis wasn't as hit as hard in that big dip as some of the other cities in California, the Bay Area, some of the inland cities, it's nice. The reality is, anytime you make a real estate purchase, there can be appreciation, but you can also lose some money. And so a lot of my families that I talk to today are thinking, I think we're bouncing around the bottom. Well, everyone has an opinion on that. But it's nice to hear this example of someone that clearly didn't expect that they would lose money. They were thinking this was going to be a real estate venture, but it still ended up being a real positive experience for them. So, I think that's a good deal, and I think that's really interesting. So for a family that might be looking today, so they sold this house last year for $277,000. That same house, would it be about the same, or what's happened to Davis Real Estate in the last year?
Well, they closed that sale in the fall of last year, so not a whole lot has changed. But we are optimistically thinking and starting to see signs, especially with the low inventory and the high demand and interest rates still being so amazingly low, that this is going to be the year where prices start creeping up again in Davis.
Yeah, well, it's hard to say. It's hard to say, and it's hard to predict. But it's interesting to kind of look at the model to say this could be a way for families to think about. When I talk about the cost of college, we talk about or trying to manage the cost of college. One of the big costs of college is if your student isn't happy where they are and they end up switching colleges. So sometimes, especially if you feel like you can come out better, but they can be in a better, safer environment, and the parents feel good about them being in a safe environment, and they feel good about their roommates, like your example, that can really save you money sometimes, because a happier kid's more likely to graduate in 4 years and probably to stay there too. So it's an interesting model, but obviously only for those that kind of can think of it that way emotionally, because it can be pretty stressful if you haven't managed the finances of, I need to kick out my roommate and I might not have rent for 5 months. I need to find a new roommate. So when you talk to this family or other families, how easy is it to find roommates?
That's a great question. The vacancy rate in Davis is very low. I think it hovers somewhere around only 3%. And from what I understand, rooms go. You post it on Craigslist, and you have your choice of roommates. So as far as rentability, I think it's very good there.
Well, that's a nice where you might want to be on the side of control, where you actually have the place you're renting out, as opposed to trying to find a place to rent yourself. It might be overwhelming if there's not that much available to you. So there's pros and cons, and I love to think about this can be a good fit for some people, but it's not going to be a fit for everybody necessarily. Do you have any other examples of some families who have done this type of project?
Well, this is just kind of a fun example. I'll be very curious to see if I run across something like this again in the future. But one of my families, they purchased a 3-bedroom, 2-bath condo back in 2002, and they paid $196,000 for it. The purpose of it was for one of their daughters. They have 3 daughters. All 3 daughters were studying different things, planned to go to different schools. However, things changed. Over the course of 10 years, all 3 daughters attended UC Davis. They all lived in the condo at one point in time. And they sold that condo last year for $234,000. So they made some money, and they had just an easy, no-stress situation for their kids as far as where they were going to live.
Well, I love that example, and wouldn't that be nice if you knew? And also you can learn from your siblings. Hey, Karen, thanks so much for joining us on College Smart Radio today.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
If you've got a student at UC Davis or one who's considering it, and you'd like to get the newest listings sent directly to your inbox as they come on the market, sign up for the Davis Real Estate email updates on Karen's website, homesforsaleindavis.com. And you can also find a link to Karen's website, homesforsaleindavis.com, on my collegesmartradio.com website under resources and links. Well, that wraps up another weekly show of College Smart Radio. We hope you picked up some new information today that helps you figure out ways to help manage the runaway costs of college. You can hear us each week here on KDOW 1220 AM, Saturdays at 3 p.m. We promise to bring you up-to-date information from the front lines of helping parents deal with the most expensive years of their life. This is Beatrice Schultz. Thanks for tuning in to College Smart Radio. We look forward to sharing more helpful information next week.
You've been listening to College Smart Radio with Certified Financial Planner Beatrice Schultz. If you have questions on today's topic, log on to collegesmartradio.com or call area code 650-587-1559. That's 650-587-1559. Join us next week at this time for another edition of College Smart Radio on AM 1220 KDOW.